Welcome everyone. Hopefully you guys are doing awesome. My name is Itai. Pogchamps 2 quarterfinals is kicking off today with the matchups of Dog against Wagamama, Gripex against DavidPakman, and XQC against Scissors. I'll be covering all of the games today as well as many games in the future, so make sure you guys subscribe so you keep yourselves updated. We now have the exciting match of Gripex against DavidPakman. Gripex is very good at tactics. In fact, before the Pogchamps match, he did do some tactics just to kind of warm up, and he was very good at solving them. And DavidPakman actually starts with a very nice opening, the Sicilian defense. But specifically, he goes for this d6 line. This is something that I love to play. And the reason you play d6 is that you want to fianchetto your bishop and place your knight on f6. But if you don't play d6, then once you place your knight on f6, there's this very annoying e5 move. And your knight is forced back, right? So to take away this e5 move, you end up playing d6, and then you do the exact same thing I just said, and you fianchetto the bishop. So this is a very good start, and this is actually something that I like to do myself, playing against e4. Both players castle. We see a trade here. The queen comes to f3, and both knights are now on their desired f6 and c6 spot for black. And one thing in the Sicilian defense is that if you're not careful, it could become a situation that you have a very tight position and that you need to open stuff up. So for example, here, notice that although both, the pawns aren't here, that would be a completely different story. So although the white pawns aren't here, this is still technically very tight here in the center. And so black doesn't have the same opportunity to try to maybe centralize the rooks and start attacking here in the center. And that actually comes into play right about now, where black, starts playing these different moves rather than trying to get the rooks involved. Notice these rooks here are looking very sad, while white has the ability to actually activate them a lot easierly. We see f4, the knight comes here. There's actually a tactical idea. So in the game, the move f6 was played, but instead you could actually play the move knight to d4. The idea is after take, you take back with the bishop and you win the queen. And obviously you're threatening this nasty fork here with the queen and the rook. So this is a okay move. I mean, it's a very tricky move. But instead we see f6, bishop goes back, and now we see this move. This is a very teachable moment. You never want to have this structure here where you have kind of four pawns on the same rank. And the reason you don't want to have this is because it means that the pawns are going to be very weak. Usually you want to have the structure where there's pawns supporting pawns. Here, none of these pawns are supporting each other, so already there's a lot of pressure on them. In fact, this pawn is already hanging, so the white bishop can take, which the white bishop decides to do, and so that's why you don't really want to have that pawn structure. The bishop moves back, some trades happen, and now there's a very bad move, e5. The reason it's bad is because, well, first off, although there is a pin, you can just take back here and then take with the knight, so this pin doesn't actually do anything. But the big reason is because you're trying to open up the center and just open the position when black still has undeveloped pieces. So this might actually help black, get their pieces into the game. So it isn't like a huge blunder or anything, but I think I would not necessarily go for it at this time. And what you'll notice is black, rather than accepting this, ends up just closing up the position here. We see a trade happen, the bishop moves back, and because of how different the position is now, black has opportunities to attack. So for example, this pawn is weak. This pawn is relatively weak because it's kind of on its own. And so white has a couple of weaknesses now in white's position. Now, what you'll notice is that this is not actually a fork. The reason being, if you take the rook, you lose your queen. So simple as that, this pawn is pinned, and this is a very high tactic position, because you'll notice after this move, now the bishop comes here. And there's already ideas like trading, which will lead to this file being opened, so you could trade even further. So there's a lot of tactics that happen here. And in the end of all of it, black just manages to trade off a lot of pieces. So something that I like to do is just kind of take a moment and analyze the position. Well, let's start by counting pawns. White has 2 to 6 pawns, and black has also 6 and 2 minor pieces and a queen. So both players have the exact same material, and honestly, I think that this might mean that white has a better position, but it's a very close game. This is probably a drawish position, but there is still a very big trap after the queens kind of dance around the king here. There's a very big problem if black takes the knight here, which seems nice because you just win a pawn, but the problem is you run into mate on this back rank. So the bishop does a crucial part here, defending this f8 square. And here we see another huge blunder. This is actually just losing the game. The reason that king g8 is so bad is because you allow queen f7, the king moves back, and now instead of going here, because again the bishop supports it, you now have the ability to go queen e8, forcing the bishop coming here and checkmate. And of course, Gripex being great at tactics, this is a very common theme. If you do a puzzle rush, and the reason this is, this is just very common, kind of kicking the queen or the king back and then delivering checkmate. So that's actually what happened, and Gripex obviously found this. So that's how the first game ended. Let's go on to the second game. So DavidPakman needs a win right now if he wants to stay in the match, and he plays the Vienna. Now with the Vienna, a lot of times you want to play f4 and just have a major pawn push on the king side, and therefore you allow you also allow your diagonals to get enabled, and you just have a big attack. And that's what happens. You see f4, you see h3. But the problem is, and this is a beautiful move, again, continuing this push, but the problem is after take, he switches focus to the queen side, and he starts pushing pawns on the queen side with these two moves. And the problem with that is that you have a very unsafe king here, and that's fine if you have a big attack coming. But if you switch focus, that you want a castle, you want to protect your king. So if you have a big attack, it's okay to kind of put your king on standby. But the second that you switch focus, you want to start protecting your king, and he doesn't do that. And so his king is still in the center of the board, and he actually blunders a pawn here. So already those attacking possibilities just become very bad, and white does not have a good position here. And you'll notice black manages to attack very nicely, wins the rook, wins more pieces, trades off the queens, which is beautiful because you have the material advantage. You want to simplify the position, so your advantage becomes more clear. He wins a couple more pawns. There's a trade here. The game isn't completely over. There's still in this position at least, because there's still maybe possibilities of like taking this piece away, and then this back rank mate here with the bishop and the rook. But that's just so rare, especially now that you took here. It's just really impossible. And so the game basically is over, especially against Gripex, who showed his wonderful skills in the first match and shows it again here. Now in this position, I think you do have a forced mate with the move knight to d2 and then rerouting it after this to b3, but that's just very hard to spot. And when you have such a big advantage, you don't really need to focus on finding the most accurate move. Instead, you can just push pawns, you can just even make your advantage bigger, and really the game just ends very quickly honestly it started once, let me back up and show you. So basically, just a very nice the ladder mate, you just push your pieces back. But what I wanted to say is that you'll notice that basically the game kind of was lost already in this position when he started shifting focus on the queen side. He had to keep going and committing to this queen side attack, and that could have given him, king side attack, and that could have given him a chance to actually come out ahead from the opening, but he doesn't do that, and I think that's what lost him the game. So he loses both games, and that's how the match ended. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys subscribe if you want more of these videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.